Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Champions of Self Visual Podcast. My name is Ben Eden. I'm your host. And before I introduce today's special guest, I wanted to remind everybody about what this podcast is about. I've figured I haven't done that in a while. This is the 11th episode, so I wanted to quickly give a description of what the podcast is about. So some people have described my life as picture perfect, but even then, I spent a number of years really suffering internally, and I learned to call it emotional pain. I went through things that showed that I was successful, and you might think I was very happy. I was very involved in leadership positions, an executive in an HR position, but deep down I just wasn't feeling fulfilled, and I was pretty sad. And I came out of it. I learned to call it emotional pain, and so now I wanted to create an environment where we would talk about emotional pain, because in my experience it just isn't talked about. A lot of people are either raised thinking you can't talk about emotions, or it's just a normal part of life, so get over it. Neither of those attitudes help. So I learned to talk to my young adult friends and learned that, yeah, a lot of them are going through emotional pain and would love the help. So I began this podcast, Champions of Self, so that we can learn not only how to be positive in life and learn those skills and talents, but so we can have an environment where people are okay to talk about the emotional pains that they're going through, so we can better be champions of self. So with that, I spend a lot of time on social media and LinkedIn nowadays, because that's what you do when you can't travel much because of the virus. And I saw a post by Jordan, and I loved what he was talking about. I look very carefully for people who I think understand emotional pain, even though they might not use that terminology. So I found Jordan on LinkedIn and loved what he said, got connected with him and had a quick conversation. And I just really wanted to invite him to this podcast so you could learn from him. So Jordan Wack, I'm happy to introduce you, and hello there. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Ben?
Great. Thanks for being a part of this today.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you inviting me to talk on your podcast. It's a real honor.
No problem. So Jordan, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
Yes. So my name is Jordan, and for the past 4 years, we have been working on a project. It's for a fatherhood organization. The organization is actually called Passages Connecting Fathers and Families. We are based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And what this project consists of is really digging into the family structure and helping fathers reconnect back with their children. And so what we do is we go into a lot of prisons, a lot of county-based correction facilities, and even the county jail. And we are working with fathers and teaching them a lot of skills, a lot of like relationship skills, communication skills, and just helping them reconnect with their children.
Very good. Now, when you and I were talking, you had mentioned that you talked to fathers from maybe they're in the correctional facility to maybe they're in a very high level position at a corporate place. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely. So I've worked with fathers who have their doctorate degrees all the way to fathers who have less than a high school education. So in a position like this, it doesn't matter what race, what religion, what background that you come from. It's really, I mean, if that you're a father, and a lot of fathers, no matter if they realize it or not, that all share that emotional pain of just being disconnected from their children. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the main roles that our organization does, is just really trying to just help them bridge that gap between them and their families, and just provide them with the tools and the skills needed in order to do that.
Very good. So First of all, you're mentioning that you're talking to a lot of fathers, and from any range of where they are.
Yep.
How do you recognize that they have emotional pain?
That's a great question. So usually what happens is when I'm working out of our community office, we'll sit down and we'll do like an enrollment. And during the enrollment process is really, I meet the father where they're at. I mean, no judgment, just hearing their stories, just kind of understanding what it is that they're going through, and what it is that we can do to help. And now when I go into like the correctional facilities, the county jail, and then the the other county correction facility, a lot of that, the conversations just come out through the different topics that we talk when I'm facilitating programming. And it's really interesting, Ben, that it doesn't matter again how much of a man that you are, because usually when you think that you're in like a correctional facility or you have your doctorate's degree, that men do not get emotional when they're talking about their families and being disconnected from their children. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many different times that I've had like men just come up to me and just bawl their eyes out. I mean, just from the brokenness and just the sadness that they're feeling. And what happens is a lot of times that fathers don't get hurt, especially in the state of Ohio. It's a mothering state, and a lot of times fathers, especially if you're not married, fathers do not really have any rights. So again, hopefully answer your question. I know I'm kind of rambling off here, but yeah, just in conversations that I'm having with the fathers. And it's pretty cool that I've had a lot of fathers tell me that, Jordan, like, I feel very comfortable like talking to you. A lot of the things that I'm sharing with you, like, I've never told anybody before. And that's a real blessing for me. It just gives me an opportunity to just to listen. And a lot of times, I mean, that's what it is. A lot of the clients, the young students, the fathers that we're working with, they need somebody to hear them. I mean, just listen to them. And on top of that, a lot of the other services that we provide to help them get through those barriers that they're facing, in order to see their children and to gain employment.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I liked a couple of things that you said, especially first, where you listened without judging. I think that's huge for people experiencing emotional pain, to have that chance. People like Brene Brown mentioned shame, and with shame, we feel like we can't tell anybody. We have to keep it a secret, and we have to keep it, so people can't see it. So we can't talk to anybody because we feel like we'll be judged. So that's huge that you do that. The other thing I liked that you mentioned is, a lot of times, just cultural, the way the society says is that fathers or men can't express emotions, right? They have to be strong, and they have to protect the family, and they just can't be weak, and they might think that emotions are weakness. That's definitely not the case. Everybody has the emotions, and they really need somebody to talk to. So Jordan, if you would, what do these fathers and these people you work with who have these emotions but maybe haven't been able to deal with them properly, what do they try to do to deal with their emotions?
So to be honest with you, Ben, a lot of guys resort back to crime, resort back to going out on the streets, and they're either selling drugs, ways to find other money. A lot of guys are depressed. A lot of guys just they feel like they're backed in a corner, and that just nobody is there just to help them out. I mean, they're just so far in a hole, it's hard for them to climb out, and they get depressed. They build anxiety, and I'm going to say probably about 90% of fathers. Again, it doesn't matter your race, your background, the education that you have. A majority of the fathers that we're serving right now resort to alcohol and drugs, and it's very unfortunate, especially in recent times with the COVID virus going on. I mean, I have a lot of conversations with clients that we're serving outside of work hours, and it's a very, very difficult time. Mm-hmm. And just really learning how to deal with those emotions in a healthy way.
Exactly. I love that. Learning to deal with emotions in a healthy way, because as I learned, people who don't know how to deal with their emotions in a healthy way by talking to somebody, or they're just, they try to do it alone, they turn to behaviors in hopes that it'll take care of the emotions.
Mhm.
So like you're saying, people who are dealing with the feelings of depression and anxiety, or maybe loneliness, boredom, things that they just don't like and don't understand, they might say, well, drugs and alcohol, they're easily available, and they'll make me forget about my emotions, or they'll replace my emotions so I don't have to worry about them anymore. So that's really why a lot of people turn to that kind of stuff. Do you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. And one quote that I've heard quite a bit in the 4 years serving at Passages is an idle mind is the devil's playground.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean when you are not in a healthy state emotionally, that you're just stagnant, and that idle mind, not having a healthy way to cope with stress or to cope with depression, that's when the enemy gets in and causes destruction.
100%.
Yeah.
So what I felt about this, and maybe you can shed some light on it too, is just that the world doesn't talk about it enough. So there's not enough knowledge for those experiencing it to do the right way of healing, or healing in a healthy way. So when people experience these emotions, let's say if somebody was raised in a home where their feelings weren't validated because either both parents didn't live at the house, or their parents were too busy, or their parents just didn't know how to do that. So then the child learns that, oh my goodness, my parents don't think that my feelings are real. I don't relate with my parents. There must be something wrong with me. So now when I go to school or work or the rest of my normal life, I start to look for validation in other things. I look for a social aspect with the drugs and alcohol, or I look to fill my life with something else by the friends that maybe I shouldn't be hanging out with because they're
Mhm.
experiencing the same thing. So I believe that if we, and this is probably what you do, if we teach people proper ways of handling the emotions and saying, guess what, if you do feel lonely, or if you do feel disappointed or worried or sad or stressed, whatever the emotion is, that is okay. That's a real emotion. It's okay to experience it. Now here's what you can do about it instead of turning to these other things. And that is so helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's interesting after you saying that, one of the courses that we facilitate in our community office and then the correction facilities, it's managing stress in a healthy way. And I will myself and my counterpart will ask the question to the fathers that we're working with, like, how do you handle stress? Like what is it that you do to handle stress? And it's very interesting. It's usually like the one of the last things that is said in class is talk to somebody.
Mm,
And I can guarantee you that, if we are working with women, that would usually be the first thing that women would say is, I'm going to talk to my mom, I'm going to talk to my sister, I'm going to talk to my girlfriend. But yeah, going back to what you're saying at the very beginning, like as men, like our society teaches us that, hey, we need to be tough. We can't show emotion, and it's heartbreaking because a lot of times we hold it in as men, okay, because we're prideful, and we don't want to show that, hey, that we need help. We just need somebody to talk to. And a lot of times, Ben, that's all it takes is just having somebody to talk to. I'm going to say probably 80% of the clients that I'm serving right now, the fathers and the students, they're like, you know what, like, I just feel so much better, Jordan, after just talking to you.
mm-hmm.
And it's such a blessing to hear that, just
That's
to be in
awesome.
a position to just um, to be there for somebody that needs to talk. That's just struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
And then
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then the greatest feeling is, at the end of the day, when the father will call our office and say, hey, you know what, Jordan, like, I found a job, and now I'm able to support my family. Or, I just established visitation rights, and I'm building that relationship back with my ex, or with the co-parent to our children, and I'm seeing my children, and it's just like, it's the greatest feeling in the world. And it's such a blessing to have those
Mm-hmm.
situations where that happens. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about when a father or a male opens up to you about their emotions. How do you feel when they do that to you?
You know, I love it. I mean, there's no, again, I know I keep repeating this, but again, as men, it's not very often that we express our emotions. We express how we're actually feeling. And when I'm sitting down in either a pod, a jail cell, or a client sitting across the desk from me in my office, and a father just shares, I mean, it's such an awesome feeling. I mean, just that vulnerability and just that bond, that trust of from a man to a man, that just saying, hey, you know, like, I'm struggling. And I'll tell you another thing. One of the a cool experience that I have is I go in and speak at IOP groups for drug and alcohol, and it's just such an awesome experience, just a very real experience where men are just extremely just honest and transparent, and just talking about just the struggles that they have. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I mean, not very often do you go out with your buddies or anything and just talk about, hey man, like, you know, I'm struggling. It's more like, hey, how you doing? Like, oh, I'm good, I'm fine. And we don't share. And when we keep that all in, eventually that 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 cap is going to explode, and it's just going to continue to get worse, like emotionally.
It's true. You know what's neat about what I've learned about all this is, well, with my story of vulnerability, not a single person has defined me by my story. Not a single person has said, Ben, oh, Ben's the guy who experienced that. No, they just appreciated that I opened up to them and that we could feel something in common. And
Yep.
now it's like, oh, wow, I understand and I can relate to Ben. So I believe that that's how you feel too with these people. I mean, you don't walk away and say, oh, so and so is this, and now I look at them differently. You leave that room thinking, I'm so glad that they opened up. I see them even more as a human being that I relate with. I don't see I don't look at them about their behavior or what point of life they're in. I say, oh my goodness, I totally understand and I totally feel what they're going through. And it's a good feeling. You agree?
100%. 100%. Yep.
Good. So, for the benefit of our listeners, if it's a male listening or a female who knows a male, right, who could be going through this emotional pain, and we agree that they just need to talk to somebody. But it's so true that one of the biggest barriers in our minds is, I don't want to be seen as weak, or
Hmm.
I don't want to be judged. I don't fully trust that the person I tell will not judge me or define me. So, what kind of advice could you give to somebody who's listening?
You know, I'm gonna say, just you, you have to be real with yourself. And I mean, you know that, I mean, the pain that you're feeling, find somebody that's, one, that you trust, two, that you can just talk to and just share your thoughts, how you're feeling, whether it's maybe a pastor at your church, or maybe a best friend, or somebody in a men's group that you're with. Just, I would highly encourage fathers, and even mothers, women as well, to just don't hold it in. And if you're not comfortable sharing with somebody, I've even had some clients just write it down on a piece of paper. I mean, how they're feeling,
Perfect. Mm-hmm.
journaling. And you know, a lot of times, uh, I will do that. I mean, I've picked up journaling within the past couple of years, and sometimes when I'm not able to like express my feelings verbally, I'll write it down on paper, and it helps. I mean, it's just getting it out of your mind and out of your heart onto paper, and then eventually, when you feel comfortable, I mean, you can share that with somebody, or you have in your journal and just read it at another time when you're starting to feel sad again.
Good. So that's a great place to start. And I would say it's okay if it doesn't happen perfectly the first time, right? It starts out
Yeah,
scary. And it definitely
yeah,
takes some practice, but with
absolutely.
with each step, we gain confidence, we gain that trust with that person, and then eventually we can determine either if we need more help, or simply knowing that somebody else understands what you're going through takes off
Mhm.
a huge burden, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you know, it's been another pretty awesome thing is a lot of guys in programming again, are from all walks of life, different ages, different races, different religions. And day one, well, within group, a lot of guys are a little apprehensive, just kind of unsure like what the program's about. And usually after the second or third day, it's just awesome to see the fathers in group just relate to one another and just say, like, I thought that I was the only one dealing with this. And it's just so therapeutical to sit in programming and just to speak to other men about how I'm feeling and know that they're not going through this alone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as with anybody, we all long for a sense of connection, and with males, we want to be on a team, right? So just
Absolutely.
what you were saying, when somebody finally realizes I'm not alone in this, but wow, I have a group of buddies that at least support me or understand what I'm going through, that's huge.
Yep.
So Jordan, do you have an experience of yours that you could share where you overcame emotional pain?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an athlete, and my entire life up through college, I kind of defined myself as just a baseball player. I mean, at that point I hadn't developed or just really knew the gifts that God has blessed me with. And so my freshman year of college, I tore my rotator's cuff. And so I sat out of games for probably about 7 weeks is what it was, just to like heal my shoulder. And then that following season, I transferred to a college out in Kansas. And during practice, it was wet, it was raining, and I was running around third base, and I slipped and I fell back on my shoulder. And I re-hurt my shoulder. And that was at that moment when I fell to the ground, I could feel my shoulder pop. And I was just like, oh man, like I can't believe it's happening. And to keep in mind, like my whole identity up to that point was just in baseball. Like that's all Jordan does is play baseball. And that was my first love. And I finally got to a point to where I had to give up playing baseball and just to concentrate on my studies. And then also I had to work full time. And Ben, that was probably one of the most difficult things in my life that I've had to go through, is just dealing with the emotions. Okay, like what next? I mean, I've defined myself as a baseball player, and what do I do now? And I mean, I was in, it was a very difficult time for me. So I mean, I reached out to some of my friends on the team and even our school counselor just to talk. I mean, just because I didn't know how to deal with it. And it was just, I mean, eventually, I mean, I think I got into a healthy place and got into another routine, but it was difficult to walk away from the game that I've started playing when I was 4 years old in T-ball.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. How is your shoulder now? All healed up?
You know, it's, I didn't do rehab properly. It's still, I can tell you when it's going to rain outside, I start to get that ache in the shoulder. But I mean, I'm still active. I mean, I still work out and do as much as I can with it. So yeah.
Well, good. I don't mean to focus on the physical, but I just realize always that the physical and emotional are related. And if we heal either side properly, then we get the benefit from it, right? So I like that you
100%.
mentioned with the emotional side that you talked to somebody, the counselor, because you didn't know how to deal with it yourself. And that is totally okay, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, I had some good guidance from an elder, and just told me, you know, it's okay to talk to somebody. And I took that advice, and I mean, it helped me out tremendously.
Good.
Yep.
Well, I like what we've learned today. Thank you for sharing, Jordan.
Yeah, Ben, I appreciate you.
If somebody would like to get a hold of you on social media to learn more or connect, how can they do that?
Yes. So they can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Jordan Wack, or they can just send me an email directly. I would love to connect with others. Anybody that just wants to share, just wants to talk, especially relating to fatherhood or anything like that. I mean, I love to connect.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, Jordan. And this has been another episode of the Champions of Self Visual Podcast. We thank you for joining, and especially thank you for always listening, and we'll see you next week.
I appreciate it. Thank you.